and podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond.
Welcome to the Deep Purple podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 110, Zephyr. And coming to you from the suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Hard-Boiled Matola.
You're a little hard-boiled sometimes. You're a good egg, though.
A little hard-boiled, but I'm all right.
Yeah, a little hard-boiled, but you're all right. What's hard-boiled? Did you have a hard-boiled egg today?
Maybe.
It's getting too easy.
Yeah, pretty much. I figured like he's gonna know. You have a hard-boiled egg? Yeah, I did. That was my snack, and then I realized we were recording a little earlier, and so I'm like, crap, that's my last food until dinner, which is gonna be at like 10 o'clock or whenever tonight.
You could just, luckily we're recording a little early, but maybe you could just have some fried chicken or something while we break into this album later.
Why fried chicken?
I don't know, but it's a nice hearty meal. Something that, or maybe something that requires a knife and a fork, so you can hear all that clinking while we're recording. That would really add to the experience.
If I wanted to hear clinking again, I'd listen to the drums on Seventh Star. Hi-yo! Ooh, these jokes are fresh from the bakery.
Seventh Star burn.
Oh,
well, I'll tell you what, folks. If you want to support the Deep Purple podcast, and why wouldn't you after that zinger, then you can do so in a number of ways. First, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can buy some shirts or mugs at our Etsy store. Or, of course, you can become a patron on Patreon or on PayPal for as little as $1 a month. Help support the show. That brings you so much joy to your morning commute or chores or whatever your preferred way of listening to it. By the fire with some whiskey, perhaps. However you like to consume the show, you could give us a little value back for the value we bring into your life. And speaking of value, we've got a patron upgrade. Kenny Wymore is upgrading to a new tier. So since it's a new tier, he gets to name it. And he's calling it the $6.65 almost evil tier.
I like it.
I love it. So yeah, got an email from him. I think it was just yesterday or the day before. So love it. So now there's a new tier featuring Kenny Wymore, upgraded from, I think he was at the $5 tier before that. Now at the $6.65 almost evil tier.
I like that.
If you want to join him, if you're not feeling quite as evil as Richard Fusey used to be before he upgraded, I think the $6.66 tier is still vacant at the moment. It's vacant right now. So if you want to be fully evil, you can go there. Or if you're, maybe you're budgeting a little more carefully, you can back it off penny and join Kenny at the $6.65 tier.
Or you could do $6.67 tier.
We're gonna have like 25 patrons within like a penny of each other in this brand new category.
Call that one Neighbor of the Beast.
There we go. There's a beer in Connecticut called Neighbor of the Beast. I think it's called 667 Neighbor of the Beast. Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot what the name of the brewery was, but it was a good one.
So now nobody can name it anything else if they get into that, because I already named it. So
there you go. So John has spoken. You can do the $6.68 tier, up the ante a little bit. But while we're thanking patrons, we've got to thank our executive level patrons before we get into the rest. And of course, coming in at the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, Ryan M. At the $15 Highball Shooter tier, we have Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. At the Turn It Up to $11 tier, Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsAstage.net. Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, Victor Campos, and Richard Fusey. Thank you to all of you for your wonderful support of the Deep Purple podcast. We really appreciate it. All right. So we do have one Apple podcast review. Actually, before we get onto that, I was a guest host on the last episode of Gain It for Riffs, which I think I talked about in the last episode. But that came out as of recording this a couple days ago. It would have been May 11th, May 10th, I think. So I guess it was slated to go up a little earlier, but Jonathan was listening and said he heard us mention it, so he said, I just published it a week early, so he had it in the can. So yeah, I had a blast chatting with those guys and playing some riffs with them, and it was a lot of fun. So check it out.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, those guys are great guys. A lot of great discussion, and it's fun dissecting individual riffs. You know, we get into whole albums. Some podcasts do songs. They just focus on just the riffs, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And this week's Apple Podcast review comes to us from the UK. 5 stars. This is from May of last year. Another oldie. This one is from Carvec, and it's called Lockdown Living. It says, connected with the DPP over the last few months through the podcasts and Twitter. Listening during my journeys to and from work have given way to easing the monotony of lockdown fever. Not much is more fun than discussing all the things purple, so really enjoying catching up on all the episodes. We seem to have a different take on what appeals to us most. I'm more into Mark II and III era than Mark IV and beyond, though I do love that stuff. Just think it's moving further away from what I see as being classic purple. Anyway, after so many requests for reviews, I thought I should front up and submit one. Loved the Rising episode so much as John reached excitability levels that made me concerned for his well-being. I don't blame him, though, as I completely agree. Keep doing your stuff, guys. Thanks, Carvec. So, said he's been interacting with us on, of course, this was a year ago, but interacting with us on Twitter. The name doesn't sound familiar, so I'm sure he has a different Twitter handle. But hey, tweet at us when you hear this, and maybe we will, I'll say, oh, you're Carvec. I should have known. But thank you very much.
My excitement about Rising will live on in infamy.
Exactly, much like Rising. All right, so this week we are dipping our toes into the lovely and calming waters of Tommy Bolin territory. We haven't done anything about Tommy, I don't think, in a while. But when we were kind of coming along in this sort of quasi chronological order leading up to the 80s, where we're kind of floating around right now, we did leave a few albums behind, and the first Zephyr album was one of them, 1969. Kind of
going all the way back to the 60s.
All the way back to the 60s. And it's funny to think Tommy was in a band releasing albums pretty much almost exactly at the same time Deep Purple was releasing their first albums.
Yeah.
But this, as far as I know, came out in October of 1969, recorded, I think, in the summer. So it's an album that, unless if you're a big Tommy Bolin fan, you've heard it. If you're not really so much into it, it's not like a super easy to come by album or something that you're going to see in every record collection. Zephyr was not a huge band at the time, but this is a really good, important piece of history. So, and John, before we get into it, what's your history with the album?
So my history with the album, for anybody watching, here's my beat up copy of it.
Yes, there's a history behind that as well.
this poor album. If anybody's probably heard me, I'm pretty sure that I discussed the flood in my parents' house like 10, 12 years ago. So this obviously looks like one of the casualties. So unfortunately, yeah, because I never would have picked up a record this beat up like on purpose. But yeah, it's pretty. I think it's pretty psychedelic, pretty indicative of the times.
A little gatefold picture there, yeah.
Yeah, you got 18 or 19-year-old Tommy Bolin there.
Yeah, really young.
And then I don't know who Candy Givens looks like. She looks like, I don't know, Ronnie James Dio or something.
Just kind of like evil, like she's creeping out of the. Yeah, everyone looks very serious in that picture, but we'll get to the gatefold later. But
oh yeah, she looks like that. But oh yeah, I probably should have saved that for album art. But anyways, yeah, I do own the album, and while I was rummaging around for it, just found out that I have the 7 star vinyl too. So I missed. That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, sometimes we don't really go to the well too much for our vinyl, but yeah, sometimes I forget what I have as well.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, same as before, like any other Tommy Bolin was, my first hearing him was on the Deep Purple Family album CD, and then the box set, and then from the box set, which I'm pretty sure, represents, at least a song or two from all of his different recorded work. That's how I even knew about that. And I think for a while, I only thought that Zephyr had like one album. And for a while, I think we thought that they had 3 albums, right?
Well, they did have 3 albums with the third. Actually, I have 4. I think they have 4 albums.
Yeah, but without Tommy.
But yeah, I think I erroneously on one of our very first episodes had stumbled upon the 3rd album, which I wasn't aware of, and I was like, oh my god, there's a 3rd Tommy Bolin album, and I listened to it and I really liked the album, and then I realized it wasn't Tommy Bolin on that album.
Right.
But I from my memory of it, I think I really enjoyed the 3rd album.
So yeah, you did. I remember you talking about it. But yeah, that's pretty much my history with it, is just trying to discover all things Tommy. And yeah, that's I think it's his first recorded work, right? Because
I believe so. Yeah, I don't think as far as like from an actual studio or anything.
yeah, because I mean, he was like, because if he was born in 51, so he was like, had to have been 18 when he recorded it.
Yeah.
He was like super young.
Yep.
I mean, now that like, not these days, you see kids that age or even younger just shredding on YouTube and TikTok and everything like that. So if you think about it, it's not really that unusual. But to think about where he stands in like the realm of legendary guitar players, you're just like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And there's one thing, to be shredding on YouTube. It's another one to actually be like taking charge of a full band too, and that's kind of what he was doing at this age. So really impressive stuff. But I too came to it through the Ultimate box set, which you can see behind me there, because I do not have the Zephyr album. And yeah, I think Sail On, the first song on this album, is the maybe the only Zephyr tune that's on there. I might be wrong on that one. There might be a second one.
No, I think so. There's another one. I think that's on the second.
It might be something
from that's on there.
From was it
going back to Colorado? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
So that's first song always really sticks out in my mind. But a little history on the album. There's not a ton of stuff out there. I did. Chris Child on Twitter is like the resident. He's like the Twitter Tommy Bolin guy. He just posts pictures and pictures and pictures and all sorts of history and stuff about Tommy Bolin. Like, here's Tommy Bolin's passport. Here's his, social security card. Here's him at his first communion. Like all these crazy things. They're like, oh my god, how do you have all these pictures? Really cool stuff. So I'm always liking and reposting and talking with him. We've been talking with him since day one about Tommy and everything. So I reached out to him. He's kind of like the Jorg of Tommy Bolin, where he doesn't like necessarily do like exact like chronological stuff like every day, but every day he's throwing out just kind of more. It's more of like a random, like it's like Jorg on shuffle. he's not doing like, here's what happened on this day in David Coverdale history. It's just kind of like, oh, here's something from December of 1971 or whatever. Really cool stuff. But anyway, he sent me this article, like a scan of the article, and a digital copy. So I put it up on deeppurplepodcast.com. You can check it out. It'll be in the show notes, which is a really good article, an interview with David Givens from 1988, I think, which he talks about the history. He says this is like pretty much the best history of the band Zephyr that's out there. So it's from this article called from this magazine called Discoveries. And then of course there's also some stuff in the Tommy Bolin book by Greg Prado. But it's a book on his whole career. So there's just a couple of chapters about Tommy. I'm sorry, about Zephyr. All the chapters about Tommy. But this is a cool book since it's all basically just so it'll have a chapter, like this chapter is called Zephyr, and then it starts off and it says Tommy Bolin, and there's a quote from Tommy Bolin. This is David Givens, and there's a quote from David Givens. So the whole book is like that. It's just quotes from people who were around at the time, who witnessed things, what they had to say. So it's a really interesting read. You're hearing it directly from the mouths of people that were involved or that witnessed it.
I like books that are written like that.
Yeah, it's cool, and it makes it very like digestible. Like you can sit down and just read a couple passages. You don't have, you don't get lost in it. So it's a cool format. So in the fall of 1967, David Gibbons met Candy Ramey in Aspen, Colorado. She was playing washboard and harmonica in this like jug band, and the name of the jug band was the Piltdown Philharmonic Jug Band, which is an awesome name for a jug band. So just imagine he walks into this club and sees her with a washboard and a harmonica, just like bluesing it up in some club. So you can imagine he took note of her and her, very distinctive voice, and kind of heard her and was kind of interested. He found out he didn't really come across her again until he found out one of his roommates was like, "Oh, I'm obsessed with Candy. She's like this great musician and everything." So they went to see her again, and then this time things clicked a little bit, and he and Candy formed a relationship. David says in this interview that he doesn't really go into it, so I'm really curious, but he says in 1968, David Gibbons was arrested in the connection with the death of one of his friends. So I think he was kind of almost like a suspect, but then he was released, I guess, because obviously he didn't do it. So he was charged and then he was released, and they later charged him with like possession of marijuana, and he kind of got released.
Ooh.
And his friends were like, ooh, scandalous, these crazy rock stars. So then his friends were like, "You should leave town." He's like, "No, I don't want to leave town. I want to stick around and see how things are going to go with Candy." So he stayed with Candy. They kind of formed this relationship. David was 19 at the time. Candy was 21, and they stayed together for the next 16 years. They got married very soon after this. I would think it was before Zephyr, because she's referred to as Candy Gibbons on the album and anytime after that. So they start playing together and jamming, and then they meet Tommy Bolin, who's kind of traveling through town. They said they thought he was a really good guitar player. Right after they met him, decided to get married. And then one night Tommy came to see the band, and he sat in with them, and David said it just kind of clicked. Like they formed a really good band together. They met this drummer, Robbie Chamberlain, and then John Farris had joined Tommy. They'd been in a band together called Ethereal Zephyr, and Candy and David didn't like the ethereal part, so they dropped that and just became Zephyr. So that's kind of how the band got together. Given the age of everyone involved and the history of what I just said, obviously there's not, with all of these members, there's not any real backs. It's not like, oh, they were in all, here's the bands that they were in. They might have, like I said, this jug band, but nothing recorded by any of them before this point. So you've got David Gibbons on bass and backing vocals. He would go on to actually work with Carly Simon a little bit. Robbie Chamberlain on drums and backing vocals, Tommy Bolin, of course, Candy Gibbons on lead vocals and harmonica, and John Farris on piano, organ, and flute. And none of them really have any credits outside of Zephyr, other than David Gibbons' work with Carly Simon, and Tommy Bolin, obviously, we know. So that's the personnel on this album. The band starts playing 6 or 7 nights a week. They did a lot of charity work early on. And at this point, Barry Fay became involved, who was kind of the legendary manager who would go on to continue managing Tommy Bolin. He told them that they were great, and he set up this kind of gig for all these big shots from the record company, for them to kind of come in and show their band off. They did that, and then they kind of got this record deal and decided to make the album that we're going to listen to today. So a little bit about this album before we get into it. So again, I'll link to the a story about the recording. Basically, just to sum it up, David Gibbons tells the story, and I'm a little confused by it, but he says there's a story where they were late and they were on their way to the studio to record this album, and they stopped at, I think he said, the Grand Canyon, and they had these like M80s, and they started lighting them and throwing them over the canyon, and they start blowing up and making this huge reverberating noise. I'm not sure why he tells that story, but it sounds like almost like he's saying that the the loudness from these explosions might have damaged their hearing a little bit. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he's saying, but I'm not exactly sure why he tells that story. But he says they get there, Bill Halverson, who's the producer, he was burning the candle at both ends. He was asleep part of the time. And between that, them all being green and everything, they really weren't happy with the mix of the album, the way it came out. And we've talked about this on the show before too, which is the first Zephyr album is a little fatiguing on the ears, the way it's EQ'd. It's very like high range and mid range heavy, and it can kind of wear on, like at first it sounds cool and then it can kind of wear on you. So David Given says, he says, and for some 40 years, I've been angry about it, the mix. The earlier this year, 2013, producer Greg Hampton called me to discuss his idea that we should fix the album and reintroduce Zephyr. He fixed the mixes, and now for the first time, you can hear what we heard before everything went wrong. I'm happy with the results. So I did get a copy of this 2013 remaster. So that's what we'll listen to. But I think it'll be interesting before we get into the album art and all that sort of stuff to have a quick little listen to the difference between the original mix. So I did a little 15-second snippet of the original versus the mix. So on the original, you'll hear it a little tape hiss, very, very high end oriented. And then when we hear the second version, and that's the remaster, and it's a little bit, by comparison, almost sounds a little bit muddy, but the character of the vocals are brought down a little bit more. The vocals sit a little bit better in the mix, because on the other one they kind of get lost a little. So, but at the same time, they're like two prominent parts and lost. So here's the original. Let's take a listen here.
A volcano of dreams, a life slowly fading, has erupted and
So that's the original, a version that we're familiar with. Now here's the remaster.
a volcano of dreams, a life slowly fading, has erupted and flown up the night. And
So if you look at the waveforms too, it's a pretty stark difference.
Well, definitely an improvement on the vocals, because it was really shrill on the original one, and then when she hit that high note on the second one, it was less kind of less jarring. And you're right, it did sound muddier, the whole mix. Like it sounded like it would be less clear, but I guess going into it knowing what you said, I can tell that that's probably an improvement.
Yeah, and I remember listening to this album quite a bit when I first got it, and it didn't really hit me necessarily. But then upon revisiting it years later, I remember listening to it and then like halfway through the album being like almost like, oh my God, it's too much. And I thought like, what is, like her voice was like so forward in the mix, and a lot of it was about how it was EQ'd, and I thought, I don't remember it sounding like this. And then I listened to Going Back to Colorado, and I was like, oh, this album sounds fine. This album sounds good. That, you know, obviously a couple years later, so technology had advanced a lot. They had a little bit probably more money to spend. They were more experienced, all that sort of stuff. But it didn't strike me as much on Going Back to Colorado. So when I heard that there was this version, I figured we usually kind of keep it originalist and go with the original release. But I didn't want us to spend the whole time getting fatigued by the mix of the highs and the hi-hats and the cymbals and the high-end vocals and all that, kind of just fatiguing our ears. I wanted to kind of listen to it in a way where we could focus a little bit more on the songs and the songwriting and the performances, rather than just getting a little fatigued. So
that's fair. And I mean, if you know, if that's the preferred mix of one of the original members of the band, then I feel that that's valid.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll still be some things, because there's only so much you can do with remixing or remastering, but it sounds like they did a nice job. Like I said, it does almost sound a little bit muddy, but you hear like you hear everything sitting together a little bit better. Like kind of what we talked about on the Burn episode. You listen to all those individual tracks and they don't usually sound that great alone. When you combine them together, it's because you can't have everything sitting in the same EQ range. You've got to have something representing the low end, some stuff in the mid range, some stuff in the In the high end, you've got to
Mhm.
balance things between speakers so that everything's not competing for the same space. And that's what you heard, that especially when she gives that, belts out that big vocal at the beginning there, you hear it gets lost almost in the drums. But in the second version, it's they probably have maybe some sort of side chain on it or something where it stands a little bit better. So even though it's maybe a little quieter in that version, it still jumps out a little bit more. So anyway, just some a little history of that of what we're going to be listening to in a little bit. Um, Before we do that, we've got to take a look at the album art, and this album is sometimes called the bathtub album, and you can see why, because it's this green background with a square painting of a bathtub, like a very cartoony bathtub and toilet, and this like weird rainbow leaking out almost from the corner of the room, and a green background with like a little glow behind it, and just says Zephyr on the top. Very, very. This cover always jumped out at me as being
Mhm.
very interesting. Anyway.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's very, um, very of its time. Like if you're, you look at it and you say, "Hey, this album's from the '60s," and I'd be like, "Yep." Well, yeah, because I
The
mean, with
album's from
the
1969. It couldn't be from 1970 or 1968. It's 1969.
well, yeah, I mean, because you got like, I don't know, it's just really the kind of I'm trying to think of like first of all, I think it's a cool album cover. I mean, I think I've always discussed how much I like anything that has like rainbow colors on it. I just really like the color spectrum. I thought it was interesting they went with green for that kind of background, but
Mhm.
I think kind of that, like, I don't know, like almost like a newspaper comic, like, like, I don't know, Shel Silverstein looking
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
it's
I
kind
was
of like
thinking like a
this.
New Yorker comic or something.
Yeah, it's kind of got this kind of like folksy, granola-y, like homemade, we did this ourselves type of thing that you saw a lot in the '60s. Just kind of that '60s art. Like, have you ever seen posters or like art from the '60s where it was all like really kind of psychedelic or like sloppy, not really perfect, just very stream of consciousness looking? That's what this looks like. It's just kind of like, hey, hey man, this doesn't have to make any sense. It's a fucking bathtub with a rainbow and there's a toilet over there. Like, okay, yeah, that's great. Print it up. Um, but no, seriously though, it's I always thought it was a striking album cover. It's one of those where I just kind of looked at it and I'm like, I don't know what this means, but it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. Kind of cool.
Well, it was done by the album was done by a friend of theirs named Alden Spillman, a friend of the band's. So he had this. I don't know if he did it for the album or if he had this picture and they liked it and wanted to use it for the album, but that's who did it. William Shepard did the liner art that we'll see in a little bit, and the photography was by Rod Dyer, who was a he worked with Capitol Records in the '60s and did some albums and did logos too for companies. So kind of a well-respected artist there. So yeah, an interesting cover. It always jumped out at me. It almost looks like it could be like a jazz band like album cover too. It didn't necessarily look like a rock band, but it looked like it could be like the Thelonious Monk album cover or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's the front cover. The gatefold, which you just showed us a minute ago, has very much in the same style, a railroad with it's interesting. I didn't really notice until just now, but it looks like a bunch of lights over the railroad, but it's actually the same like shower head and little faucets
Uh-huh.
lining that you see on the bathtub on the front of the album, like right here, the little
Mhm.
faucet, and so it's going kind of off into infinity. You've got the mountains in the background, probably like a Colorado thing, and then all around is kind of looks like rivers of rainbow in the background. So cool, done in the same style as the bathtub portion.
Yeah,
And on the
very '60s. Yeah.
very '60s, very cool, very psychedelic, very far out, man. And then you've got the
Groovy.
band picture of all of them looking too cool for school on the right-hand side. Tommy Bolin all the way on the right. You got David Givens with the blonde hair in the back, Candy up front, looking very sinister, like she's like very, very cool picture of the band. And then the back cover, more of the same. You've got the it looks like presumably the bathroom door with a little sign over it that says Zephyr, like you'd put a sign out that says occupied or do not disturb. It says Zephyr, and then the rainbow is like leaking out of the bottom of the door as if the tub was leaking the rainbow or something. So really cool. Like three. It's cool that they matched the same vibe throughout the entire album. It's a really cool look.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those where it could have easily been, you know, a bunch of kids that were, you know, I mean, they were all presumably late teens, early 20s, based on, well, how well we know Tommy is, and Candy and David. And you know, it could have just been like, you know, they didn't know what they were doing. Nobody knew how they were going to package them, whatever. It could have easily just been like this thrown together or like missed opportunity or whatever, but somehow it all kind of came together, at least the artwork, to be kind of like cool, cohesive, memorable, I think, you know, and it definitely is representative of the time when it was released. Like, I mean, this is like, I mean, you could easily, like, somebody could show you this and be like, oh, what is this, a parody of the 60s? And you'd be like, no, this is from the 60s.
This is the real deal.
Yeah.
In Australia, apparently they didn't like this cover, so they made them use the inside gatefold as the album cover. So it's that picture from the gatefold, and it just says Zephyr up on top, which is, you know, it's a cool band picture. So, but this looks more like what you'd expect from a rock band of the time, whereas the other one looks like the genre of music looks unclear on the real album cover. On the Australian cover, it's like, oh, this is a psychedelic rock band, although they're not really a psychedelic; they're more of a blues rock band. And then the back cover in Australia, just very, very typical sort of back cover, very bland, black on white, lists the song names and the players and everything. So nothing, definitely doesn't stand out at you the same way, but it probably, for marketing purposes, they probably just thought, well, hey, we want to sell some records. We don't think a bathtub's going to do it. Let's get a picture of this cool looking band on the cover instead. And that is all the album art. You ready to get into listening to some of these tracks here?
Let's get into some of these psychedelic, groovy, far out tracks.
Groovy, man. Well, before we do that, of course, we have to thank our core level patrons coming in at the $6.66 tier. Oh, nobody. If you want to be evil, you need to join on that one. At the $6.65 almost evil tier, of course, Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 nice price tier, we have Fielding Fowler and Dr. Jill Brees. At the $5 money lender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, Will Porter. Yes. And then at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardot, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, and Stuart McCord. Thank you to all of you for your support of the show. And with that, we're going to kick into this album. We're going to listen to the remastered version, which opens with the song Sail On.
A volcano of dreams, a life slowly fading, has erupted and flown up the night.
I already like the mix better.
And living or not,
The mix is great.
I must go on sailing.
And this song is, the first time I heard it was it sounded like all the records my dad had that I would listen to as a kid, even though he didn't have this one. Got that like it could be a Joe Cocker Grease Band sort of thing, or
Right. I mean, the obvious comparison because of the vocals is that it's like sounds like a Janis Joplin type of song.
Sure, yeah, my dad had Big Brother in the Holding Company, so I used to listen to that
Oh,
album.
here comes the sun.
Which, I mean, this song actually sounds like one of her, or at least the opening of it reminds me of one of her songs, one of her popular ones, or more popular ones. Piece of My Heart.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course.
But even the sound and the vibe of the album and the song is very, like, late 60s rock band.
Yeah, and they said they were, they were a live band and didn't really quite know what to do in the studio, so they just kind of, they didn't have things really fleshed out, but... You think of that early Ritchie tone that he had when he was using the Gibson, like very similar kind of sound to the playing.
Yeah. This is some really good organ playing right here.
Yeah, it's a great little instrumental.
But yeah, you can tell in Tommy's early tone, you can tell it's early Tommy. He's still developing.
And they talk about how he was developing, working on the Echoplex on this album, actually. So he had that in play early. But you figured this is something they would have... This is a great moment here. He had it at such an early age,
Yeah, I mean, that's his style right there. He already developed his style,
Some really jazzy little descending jazzy chords there. But a lot of this would have been improvised, and David says Tommy came up with the verse on this song, and David kind of laid out the musical section and how they were going to break up the solos and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, really raw sounding. Like, you can tell they just went in the studio and started playing. Not a lot of effects or any of that kind of stuff.
They
no
played
frills.
a show, right? Like, we're going to play a show, and it's going to turn into an album. It's almost a live album.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, if you could. This sounds like one of those live albums that, like, after the song's over, you would hear like the faint applause.
Yeah.
Like it was like a bootleg almost. I'll tell you, the remix definitely makes the vocals a lot more tolerable, because I was kind of dreading going into listening to this album for that reason.
Yeah, the last time I listened to it, it sounds like the band had a similar feeling after listening to it in the studio when it was released.
And the hope is gone. I must go on sailing.
And like you said, she does get the Janis Joplin comparison, which David Givens takes a little offense to. I don't want to say offense, but kind of more like a...
Too bad.
I guess he didn't want to. It was kind of like the way you take offense to people saying Coverdale is a Robert Plant clone. People,
Ooh, yeah, you're right.
people would say, like, oh, she's a Janis Joplin clone, and he would say, well, no, she's... Yes, there's obvious similarities there, but she's not a Janis Joplin clone. She's got so much of her own style.
Well, also take note that I said that she was similar. I didn't say she was a clone.
That's true.
I mean, she's very reminiscent. I mean, it's obvious she's trying to do that style. And I mean, they were both making music at the same time. So how could you not make that comparison? But that being said, she's got pipes.
Sure does. And a lot of character, it's not a squeaky clean, perfect voice. It's got that nice little, like, kind of bite to it, and edge to it that makes it really interesting. Kind of a ballsy way to open the album with a almost 8-minute long.
Yeah.
Because it's not a super long album. At the time, you can only fit so much on one LP. But it's interesting. This song is credited to Tommy Bolins and Candy Gibbons, or Tommy Bolin and Candy Gibbons.
Tommy Bolins.
Tommy Bolins. And here you go. He maybe was 17 when he joined this band, or even younger. Here he is already opening albums with his songwriting. That would become even more prolific after this. And you can see them just playing this. You almost do expect to hear that audience swell after this is done, or hear some crowd noise.
Yeah.
Not usually how you.
Oof.
Pretty rockin' ending. And
Yeah.
yeah. Woo! And it doesn't end with like a stinger either. It just kind of, everything just kind of trails off. It's kind of an interesting ending. All right, so John, what do you say? How do you rank Sail On?
Whoops. Again, the sheet's giving me problems. There we go.
The sheet. It's always the sheet.
Yeah, it's never me. It's a bowl of sheets. I give Sail On. I'm sailing into 4. I'm giving it 4 psychedelic bathtubs. I thought it was a lot better than what I remembered, and I honestly, I think you've already made a great choice doing the 2013 remaster of it, because like a lot of it is would have been ruined by the EQ of the vocals, because like this is just one of those albums where there are some albums where there's just like you can listen to a couple of songs because of the production or the vocalist, like in particular, and then you're just like, okay, I'm getting like vocal fatigue here, like I can't listen to this all the way through, this is just too much.
Another album like that, not so much about the vocals, but I feel like when we listened to Elf, the first Elf album, that album was very much had that kind of same feeling, not so much vocals, but just overall everything kind of sounded the same, and by the end of the album we're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, I think albums from this this period had a lot of that, when you got later on into when they knew how to producers and engineers knew how to kind of deal with rock music a little bit more, produce it better. Things got more interesting when they were kind of different sounds, guitar tones, what have you. Things got more interesting. There's a certain kind of charm to it because it's just a band jamming. There's not like a lot of different guitar effects or like things that are introduced into it, and I mean that can kind of make it boring, but if you're in the mood for that, I mean this could sit alongside anything from that era. I mean, just listen to like Cream, Hendrix, the Allman Brothers, Janis Joplin, just naming a few 60s bands off the top of my head. I mean, it's all kind of like that same kind of stripped down, live sounding rock. And I liked it. I thought it was good. I thought that the jam was good. I really liked hearing early Tommy. His guitar tone is definitely not, like you can tell it's him, but it's not what, like, you can tell his tone developed and, got more full and changed, probably with his gear when he, became more experienced, got more money, whatever. Yeah, it was really just interesting to hear him, and I like his early tone. It was really just live sounding, and not too much. I mean, Candy Givens is too much. She's the one who's like riffing and scatting and bebopping
Yeah,
and
yeah.
screaming all over the place here, and not everybody was doing that, so everybody wasn't competing for that
Mhm.
spotlight type of thing. So I think they held it together pretty good, and it was a good strong opener.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned Cream because Bill Halverson, the producer here, had previously worked with Cream and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, so it's kind of where he's coming from. I will also give this one a 4. This is the song that I always think of when I think of Zephyr,
Mm,
probably because it's on the Ultimate, like we talked about, and it's the opener on this album, so it's one of those ones that I probably got a little extra exposure to, but I love the Tommy's guitar opening the song, the way that they open. Like I said, it reminds me of like a Joe Cocker kind of feel to it, or something like
right,
why wasn't
yeah,
Zephyr at Woodstock? Probably because they got formed too late. if
yeah,
Woodstock had happened a year later, they probably would have been there. But this is a thing I could see my dad really getting into this album, really liking it. I love that like the way her vocals come in so kind of gentle, and then she just starts belting it out. I like she throws in like these little, I don't know if it's intentional, but she throws in all the names of these like Beatles songs, and she says "A Day in the Life," and Tommy goes and he's doing all these little licks after what she's saying, and so it's got this very blues band feel, more blues than rock, but also kind of jazz, like a jazzy blues band.
right,
It works
yeah.
really well, so I like it.
What,
Which brings
what's
us
your
to
rate?
our
What's your rating? Did you rate it?
oh yeah, 4. Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't think I heard you rate it.
Oh, well, maybe I forgot. The next track up is Sun's Horizon.
Oh, here we go with the harmonica.
Yep. I'm sure that probably benefits from the EQ too, because the harmonica can really cut through.
Sun's rising.
This kind of reminds me of like when early Black Sabbath would throw in like a blues number on one of their albums. Like I could see them doing
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like this. But maybe a little doomier, but same feeling.
Yeah, the sun's rising, baby. Oh, it's rising way high up in the sky.
This is another Tommy Bolin. This one's written by Tommy Bolin and David Gibbons.
Hmm.
And it's about that time, man.
Oh, nice little bass
Well,
run
then
there.
I start to make you cry.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't think of Tommy Bolin doing a straight ahead blues. You usually think of him being a little jazzier.
Yep.
You ain't treated me so very bad. Oh, but you ain't treated me too good.
Nothing so far. Nothing really super outside the box. A very standard
No, you ain't
blues.
treated me so very bad. No.
You never know what Tommy's gonna throw in there.
Oh, but you ain't treated me very good. And now it's time for you to say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That's great.
Oh, but you would.
Time for you to say bye-bye. Bye-bye. You really played the harmonica there.
Wow, the bass is just doing all sorts of crazy stuff back there, huh?
That's great. Since it's Tommy Bolin, I just keep expecting them to go into some sort of like crazy little breakdown.
Yeah,
like
right.
crazy outro, but I don't think it's happening on this one.
I gotta find myself a good man. Oh, yeah, baby. And it's gonna treat me like a real good woman.
I don't know how it's like to have your wife in the band with you, telling you, singing about how she needs to find herself a real good man.
I gotta find myself a real good man.
Honey,
It was
I'm
the
ready.
it was the 60s, man.
Oh, Lord, it's gotta treat me like a good woman.
Everybody was all
Free love.
it was all free loving, all free love.
And then I'm gonna take him to my bed.
Ew.
I'm gonna make love to that
Hi-yo.
man. Well,
Oh.
till he's almost dead, yeah.
Oh, hi-oh.
She's gonna kill the guy.
Brr.
Right. All right. Sun's a rising. What do you think about Sun's a rising, Johnny?
I'll give Sons of Rising a 3.5. You know how I feel about lazy blues songs.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I mean, I wouldn't say that this was a lazy blues song. It was definitely like, I think you said it best, nothing outside the box here.
Yeah.
You know, you got your 1-4-5. They did it well.
Mhm.
It wasn't anything exceptional. I mean, there was the one part that I really liked, I think that kind of elevated it, was that when the rest of the band dropped out and there was the dueling harmonica and guitar solo. It was pretty cool. Hard to think that, like, you would hear this and you'd be like, you know, Ritchie at this time and Tommy Bolin at this time couldn't be two more different guitar players. Like, you'd never think down the line that they would have ever been in the same band.
Right.
And I mean, at different times, but, you know, like, oh yeah, let's pick this guy, you know, like, this is going to be Ritchie's replacement.
Mhm.
Like, even years later, like, I mean, their styles couldn't have been any different, but yeah, just interesting to hear them, like, you know, just because I'm thinking the whole time, like, they were both new bands and releasing albums around the same time on like different ends of the globe. And, you
Yep.
know, just kind of thinking like the difference in the types of music, you know. And even Ritchie doing blues is like way different than this.
Yeah,
know?
even the way he handles blues, yeah.
Yeah, this is like much more like straightforward, but like really good, you know, like,
Mhm.
whereas you'd be like, wow, like there's something about it when Ritchie does it that's like you just don't know what it is, but it's like, wow, listen to him, like, because Ritchie could do classical, he could do blues, whatever, and then you hear Tommy and you're just like, wow, like what a great blues player, you know. There's
Mhm.
just like, there's something about him playing that blues that stands out. So it's like really good in different ways. But I'm on a tangent, so
No, I agree. I agree with what you said. I will give this one a 3. I like it. I think, like you said, it's not I wouldn't call it a lazy blues song. I think, like, as far as writing goes, it's probably a lazy blues song, but as far as performance and playing, it's not done
right.
in a lazy way. They're all great little bass runs. Drums are nice and solid. Awesome soloing by the harmonica and the guitar, throwing in some great vocal screams. So the passion is there and it's really, really strong. And in 1969, you probably couldn't pick up a rock album or an album anywhere that didn't have a song like this on it. So it's like very much a product of their times. You wouldn't really think about putting a song like this on an album nowadays. That was kind of the thing to do then. And I think they do it really well. But it's probably, while the first song sounds sort of dated in a way because it's 50 years old. But it sounds, the style sounds dated. I feel like it holds up a little bit more, and this one doesn't hold up quite as well. It's just very, like I said, yeah, another blues song, but again, really, really well done.
I mean, kind of makes me think a little bit of like an Allman Brothers song,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Sure.
So I mean, then there's another one, like they were like late '60s, early '70s, right? When they first, think their first album was like 16, probably late
I'm
'60s,
sure it had to be around then. Yeah.
69, 70. But that's like, I think this reminded me of like, what's the song that I would hear on the radio? So Whip and Post.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that kind of vibe, I don't think that it's, similar in any other way, but it kind of gives me that vibe a little bit.
Sure.
So, but again, it just shows that they were like, at that age, they were like kind of like, like sucking up what was in the,
Yeah.
the atmosphere of the, what music was out at the time. So,
Yep. Absolutely. All right. You feel that? I think I just felt some raindrops. It's starting to rain. We better move it inside for the next song. Raindrops.
Raindrops, so many raindrops.
Very like loosey goosey with the vocals. I love it.
Falling from my eyes, falling from my eyes.
And this one's written by. This one is a cover written by D. Clark.
Rain keeps falling from my
oh, so this is a cover?
Yeah. And I am not familiar with the original, so I don't know how this stacks up compared to it. Very sloppy in this one.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm digging it. Like, it seems like she's like, her voice isn't meshing with the song.
I think even the instrumentation's a little sloppy.
All right, but she's like way over the top here. Like, I'm glad that the vocals are, even with the vocals EQ'd differently, like, they're starting to get on my nerves. Like, her voice is just wrong for this song.
And this is something I think like in a quick fade out on that one.
Mercifully.
Almost missed it. But I think in a live setting that might have been something they could throw into a set, but it sounded like, I don't know, you know how I feel about covers on albums. I'm usually not a huge fan. So
Well, I wonder can you pull up the original? Do you know who's it by?
Raindrops by D. Clark. I can pull up the original. It might take a
Because that'd be interesting to hear, what they were going for.
yeah, we'll have to give me 1 second here and I can get the original. Whoop, there we go. Okay. Raindrops. All right, let's take a listen. Where are you, Raindrops? Here we go. Raindrops by D. Clark. It up a bit. So,
Mhm.
all right. Okay. So how would you rank Raindrops?
Well, this one's going to be a 2.5 toilets for me.
You're not. So if it's above 2.5, you give it bathtubs. If it's below, you give it toilets.
Yeah, because this
That
one's a
makes-
stinker.
That makes.
Hi-yo.
It also sounds like. Well, let me let you finish.
Yeah, especially hearing the original, like, I mean, I get what they were trying to do. They put their spin on it, but it was not a successful spin. I mean, I've heard, I can't think of anything offhand, but like, a band that's kind of taken a song that's good, like, all right, like, you know what? I just thought a great one is These Boots by Megadeth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Couldn't have been any different than the Nancy Sinatra one, right?
Yep.
They put their own spin on it. That was kick ass.
Yep.
This was not kick ass. And I think to your earlier point, it was like, it was really, the arrangement was sloppy. The vocals just like got downright annoying toward the end. It was just not like, she needed to be reined in for this kind of song. And I don't even think she was on key. Like, I think her, her kind of like, her delivery, kind of being all over the place. Like, it works in the original songs where she punctuates certain things, or she goes all over the place. Like, if you try to be a vocalist doing a cover of one of these songs, good freaking luck, trying to figure out what she's doing.
Oh yeah, wow. She's definitely got a style all her own. It's hard to follow sometimes,
but I feel like, if they had reined it in a little bit, and she was like, okay, I'm going to be a little more reserved on this, maybe it would have been more successful. But I didn't really like it.
yeah. And I mean, I think it falls into what we see in a lot of the albums we've covered from this era. Like, if you go back to our reviews of the first Deep Purple albums, very much the same thing. It sounds very rushed, because I'm sure it was. Studio time was at a premium. David Givens talks about the producer being asleep because, and he really says too, he functioned more as an engineer than a producer. He wasn't necessarily the producer in the way that we think, calling the shots, saying, hey, let's get another take. The guy was just like, oh, you guys ready? Boop, record. I'm going to take a nap. So he might have done the technical stuff and set everything up, but they maybe needed a little somebody with like a little bit more of that direction.
Sure.
You think of, in 1969, a group of late teens, early 20s people going to the studios, whether it's Deep Purple, whether it's Zephyr, they all have the albums all suffer from the same kind of stuff. They're rushing through some of the stuff that they've just worked out to put in their sets. They've been together as a band for a matter of months, and then you kind of put them on the spot to create an album. And sometimes you get a pretty good mix. I think this album's looking a lot like the early Deep Purple albums, in that you get some really good tracks, some tracks that sound a little rushed, some tracks that are maybe filler, and maybe throwing in this cover might have been one. But also, they were doing this in a live show, and I think in a live setting, a lot of this stuff would have worked a little different.
Right. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, this could have been something, like you said, that they threw into their live set, and they're like, wow, that works great live, and then it just didn't land when they recorded it for whatever reason.
I will give this one a 2. I think for the same reasons that you said. It
Oh
sounds
wow, I
like,
guess I was more generous than you. I'm surprised.
well, yeah, I mean, I think realistically, I think even if another take, maybe it sounded it sounded a little half baked, like they could have taken a little longer. But I see what they're going for, and it's another thing when you're in a band and you play a song a certain number of times, you develop it over time. I'm sure if you heard them play this in fact, there's a do they play this one? I don't think so. There's a on this special release, there was a live section. So I was going to see like what would they sound like playing this live a couple years later, or a year later, or even a few months later. But I don't see it here. But maybe I can reach out to Chris and see if he has a live version, because I'd be interested to see how it developed outside of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we move on to the next track on side one, which is Boom Ba Boom. Great name for a song. Like a Booker T and the MGs kind of feel.
I'm sneaking to the kitchen for a snack.
I like the guitar and organ solos in tandem there. It's kind of cool. So it's a super short song. It's only under 90 seconds. Little. It's more of a musical interlude than anything. Got that sneaky little bass line.
Oh, she just couldn't help herself, huh?
There you go. Well, it's one of those classic tracks where it's a warm up and a wind up into another song. So it's really kind of an intro to the next song. So
yeah, but it's just funny because I'm like, I couldn't remember, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this song isn't ending without her throwing in a just like, yep, and sure enough, there she goes.
Boom, ba, boom.
Well, my guess is that based on their ages and everything, and thinking the way that we thought when we were younger, that bass player came up with the line boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, and they're like, you know what we should call this? It would be hilarious if we called this track Boom Ba Boom.
Because that's what the bass sounds like.
Because, do that kind of thing.
I would have done the exact same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So
boom, boom, ba, boom, 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 ba, boom. It's a great little bluesy sort of bass line.
Yeah.
So what would you get? Obviously, it's a situation where we're looking at what is probably the intro to the next song.
To Somebody Listen,
which is going to continue that vocal being belted out right into the next song. What would you rank Boom Ba Boom?
You know what? I enjoyed that. I'll give it 3.5 psychedelic bathtubs.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pretty good. Didn't stay too long at the party.
Right. I mean, it has that boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, and then at the end, the doon, 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 doon. So obviously, you're not, if that's your only two parts of the song, you're not gonna milk. If they milked that for 4 minutes, it would be a considerably lower score for me. But I will also give it a 3.5 because I really like it, and I love little instrumental things like that are transitions between songs or intros to songs. I think it makes albums interesting and keeps them spicy, rather than just song after song, having things kind of blend in and out. Always keeps my interest. So
it was kind of a jazzy bluesy fusion of what they already doing, kind of a little interlude. Thought it was pretty good.
It was really nice. And that leads us into the next track, the last track on the first side, which is Somebody Listen. blues intro here. Really nice bass tone too. I really love that tone on the bass. I feel like Tommy's getting a better guitar tone than Ritchie had on the first, or at least on Book of Taliesin.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of guitar he was playing here, but love the harmonica, the way it fades in like that. You almost can't tell if it's harmonica or vocals.
I know.
He's like, could have been just like streaking into it. He's a really good harmonica player. I love her style. It's funny, they have an intro into this song, and then there's like, this song we're already like almost the same amount into this song of an intro, like an instrumental intro.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's cool because it breaks it up. It's not the same. It's a different vibe than the boom ba boom.
I walked into a cave of my own free will. Oh, now I'll get
Ooh, nice little bass run in the background there. It's like a Ian Gillan Ritchie sort of trade-off
Yeah.
there.
I walked into a cave of my own free will. Oh, and now I can find my way back out.
And the boom
I
ba boom
love-
was written by David Givens. This one is credited to David and Candy Givens, Tommy Bolin, and John Ferris.
Okay.
Oh, can somebody hear me? Can somebody help me? Oh, can somebody show me the way? I try so hard to be good. Oh, but people just won't let me be.
It's surprising that like John Ferris and Robbie Chamberlain didn't go on to be in any other bands, because they're pretty solid players.
Oh, tell me where I'm going.
Yeah.
Tell me what I'm doing. Oh, but that ain't no part of me. Oh,
Love Tommy's guitar tone in this song.
It sounds like the tone that I used to get on my old
no, the doctor
Ovation, probably just because it's such an old guitar.
live in the cave. Oh, touch me, baby.
I think the guitar's from '69. Really old one. Fortunately, my playing didn't sound like Tommy, but my tone did. I mean, it sounds like another example of, this is a very standard blues progression. Nothing crazy, but a lot of passion being put into it on every level. Like I said,
I
nobody's
think so, yeah.
phoning it in. Great solos, great playing, great bass groove and little runs going on in the background. Candy obviously is belting it out. There we go. She has two speeds. There's like, she does have that kind of softer tone, but she's mostly on belted out. What Tommy was doing right there. It's funny because I thought he was like matching what she was doing, and then he just threw in that.
It's like, yeah, screw
He was
it.
like, it's like, never mind. All right, John.
I gotta tell you, like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it through side two because I'm already sick of her voice. Like, I really thought that I could, like, it was tolerable at the beginning, but it's like she is just too much. Like, I mean, Ian Gillan, Glenn Hughes. I mean, even Hughes. Let's use him as an example because he's like extra. I mean, like Gillan
He's-
threw it in, like, you know, occasionally. Like Hughes, like, yeah, but I mean, this is just like, this is overkill, man. Like this song was like, I don't know. I was like, I couldn't enjoy it. She was like ruining it for me.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is it's a 6-minute blue. You know, you start off the album with
Yeah.
a 8-minute blue, or the side with an 8-minute blues song, and end with a 6-minute blues song. So it's quite a, it's a lot of blues on that first side.
Yeah.
And it's
The pace is not there
Yeah.
for,
And I think you got to consider, and when you think of going back to Colorado, and I haven't listened to that one in a while, but from a songwriting standpoint, that this is that they're playing bars and playing blues clubs and stuff, and I think having this sort of stuff going on in the background is just what you're looking for. But
Yeah,
like
but I mean,
something, a little bit more.
but doing a long blues song without, like, you know, screeching and wailing like that over, like it, like, you know what I mean? Like there was no restraint. Like, you know what I feel like, especially like I was laughing at the kind of the beginning because they were having that intro, and then all of a sudden you heard the harmonica like come in, and you didn't know if it was her voice or was the harmonica. And the first thing I thought was, is just like, you know what, she probably, I just have this picture of her marching in there and just being like, all right, move over, fuckos, because I'm taking over this whole song, whether you like it or not. You know, like she was just telling everybody, like, you're gonna let me do anything, you know. And David Gibbs like, yes, honey, you know. Like I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. I just get this sense like nobody had the guts to tell her, like, you're just way too extra. Like this
Well,
is.
I think it's like we said. If there was a producer involved.
Yeah, I think he
maybe
might have
they
been
would
like, you need to
you know,
calm
like they
down.
do with anything, they would have said, no, we're doing another take of that, or no, we're gonna tone back the, it's too much guitar, or too much, you're doing too much with this, it's too many drum fills, what all the little things that a producer will do to rein in a band.
But I don't know.
Every band member has a tendency to do something that could use a little reining in. So,
but I mean, I feel like if you had Gillan, Ronnie James Dio, you know, Coverdale, like, you know what I mean? Like any of those vocalists, like any of the Deep Purple vocalists, since we're, you know, discussing the family, over this type of song, which I think any of them could do, like they would have, even in the early days, I feel like they would have shown like little restraint. I feel like you're right though. It's just like whether, you know, she was to blame or not. There was no producer or no guidance, or they were just playing in bar bands. Yeah, but I mean, the end result is like still what we're judging, what we're rating right now, regardless of how it happened. It's still there.
I think the thing that really turned me on to Sail On was that it was a blues song, but there was breakdowns and there was parts, and I think listening to just a 1-4-5 sort of thing for a lengthy amount of time will wear on anybody, unless there's, like we talk about all the time on the show, unless there's something to switch it up a little bit, make it something beyond just a blues song. But again, in 1969, there's probably a little bit more of that going on. So,
all right, well, somebody listen, nobody listen. I'm giving this 2 toilets.
2 toilets.
There were some bright spots in it, which are mostly Tommy, and the bass, but the vocals just flat out ruined it for me.
I will give it a 2.5. I think it was more cohesive than like what they did with the Raindrops, but I agree with your assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, so next track, we'll flip the record over. The next song, first song on the second side, is called Cross the River. Oh, this was on the Ultimate.
Yep.
This is the one I was thinking of. And this one was written by Candy Givens and David Givens. It's funny, it sounds like Tommy.
Yeah, right?
They said they would open sets with the song.
Sounds like an opener.
Great tune. That's cool because it's got that kind of chugging immigrant song almost kind of sound to it. It's not just doing a standard bluesy sort of thing. I love that little stop. It's like great little tone.
That was his early morning.
He hadn't found that second note yet. This is fantastic right here. This is what, when I think of this and Sail On, I kind of want more of this with the band, more grooving and little breakdowns. But this is brilliant arrangement.
Yeah.
This little walking bass line in the background.
See, now they win me back with this. They do this very well. This is really
That's
good. I mean, this is like, no wonder they put
great.
this on the Ultimate.
She matches him perfectly on that. Great. Flute comes from out of nowhere. He said that Candy Givens and David Givens had this song from a band they were previously in called Brown Sugar. And they brought it to this band and I'm sure made a few tweaks, but so he's playing flute and the keys, so he's like going from the flute, throws that flute down and starts tickling the ivory. It's really nice.
He probably did. He probably did in the studio. He was just like, all right, somebody catch this.
On the Candy, quick! Or maybe you just overdubbed the flute part too. I don't know. And then it kind of picks up a different groove right here, which is really nice. And these are kinds of things that'll happen naturally in a live jam. But they must have had that mapped out how long they were going to be in that section.
Oh yeah, then right back into it.
Really tight. Echoplex right there.
Oh, just a little taste.
Yeah, right. Well, that's very refreshing start to the second side of the album.
Yeah, I mean, after I don't know what I would feel is the abysmal ending of the first side. Just that won me back. Side 2 won me back. Well, because it's fresh, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like they did something like you said, like the sail on, you know, like they're doing their thing. They're not trying to do a cover or blues standard or type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's creative. It's original.
And when you think of why they chose those two songs for the ultimate, obviously, I mean, Tommy's playing throughout has been great. It's all over the place. It's really solid stuff.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think the reason those two songs are chosen is because so far they seem like they're the most interesting songs of the album. They're very well done, and they're not just that standard kind of blues progression. But what would you
Mhm.
rank Across the River?
4.5
Oof. All right.
psychedelic bathtubs.
We're back, baby. 4.5.
We're back. We're back, baby. There's yeah, I can't say enough about this song. It's like you said, it's one of the first ones that I heard from early Tommy Bolin on the Ultimate, and like you said, there's a reason that it was on there. And even in the middle, it sounded a little more produced when they had when she was matching him with the guitar notes. It almost sounded like
yeah,
but it almost sounded like she did some vocal. It sounded like there was some like vocal overdubs. Like it sounded like a chorus of like her.
Yeah, and then
doing
a
it.
chorus
Sounded like
comes
a little,
in, and then the flute's like whoa, where did that come from? It's just really cool.
like the flute arpeggio coming in, you know, like yeah, it sounded like it was kind of faded in a little bit. Like this song too, production wise, sounded like it had a little bit more put into it, a little more work put into it.
Yep.
But I mean, yeah, the song, the playing, like the riff, like, you know, Tommy's little, you know, accents in there, like after, you know, each verse. Yeah, it was just great.
Yeah.
Highlight of the album.
Yeah, it's a great tune. I will also give it a 4.5. I was toying with a 4, but I think what pushes it over the edge is the arrangement. And like you talked about, is maybe Candy's vocals being a little unrestrained throughout a lot of the first side. Here is an example of them being really fitting in well, and you know, she's still doing her wow, like belting it out, but it's not, because the song has more of a structure, probably it's done in a little bit more restrained way, whereas some of those other songs were just, they were kind of probably, you know, I'm assigning things to them that I don't know for sure, but maybe they were just transported to like, hey, we're playing live and we're just gonna do what we do live, and sometimes that doesn't translate to the studio as well. But I think that this one was mapped out in a way that really worked. So
yeah.
The next song up is a song we have played on the show before, way back when, in one of our first episodes when we were introducing Tommy Bolin to show his background. We played a live version of this, but this is the studio version of St. James Infirmary, which is another cover.
I feel so blue and
The original's by Joe Primrose.
oh, what am I living for? Oh, my baby, it went away. Oh, God, and it left me.
It's really nice little. It's nice to hear her singing, like, just with one instrument, not belting it out over the whole band. So
yeah.
No more. I went down to the St. James Infirmary. Oh, God,
So far, really nice build happening here. I'm waiting for that like raucous ending where everyone's just going crazy.
Yeah, so far I'm not hating it.
Around you.
And here's an example of a song that's very standard blues, but it's got a lot of character so far. It's not breaking any ground as far as like the arrangement or the progressions, but it's a well laid out song. Nice little jazzy breakdown there. When we had played this on one of our early episodes, there's a video on YouTube. Maybe I should put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Of them playing this live on like a TV show, and they actually have like the bathtub set up, like on the set. So it's like kind of a cool, cool cross promotion, if you will.
Yeah.
And I guess John Ferris had suggested they cover this song, and Givens had the idea to change it to this more like 6/8 time versus the. I guess I don't know what the original is in. Maybe we can take a listen after this. Kind of reminds me. It reminds me almost like a Zeppelin song, like one of their blues songs that they would do. The way that they would, just kind of got a Robert Plant style delivery.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Well, it's like a sudden ending after you expected more like cymbal crashes and things.
Yeah.
But, all right, St. James Infirmary, John. Kick it off.
Her voice is going to put me in St. James Infirmary. My ears are bleeding. I can hear what you're like. That's the thing though, is like, this is just like, we got to listen to 2 more songs of this. Just the vocals are like, I'm starting to get tired of them, man. However, I will give it a 3.5. I think that there's some creative stuff going on here. Like she did pull it back a little bit at the beginning. I like the,
Mhm.
the vocal and the guitar interplay at the beginning. And yeah, there was some really good kind of chord changes in there where I think she did nail it.
Mhm.
And of course, Tommy as well, like just great playing. I mean, the band is really good. Um, and I thought the song was pretty good too. And I could hear your point too, is that like if you just pluck this out of the hair and like gave it to Led Zeppelin, it could sound like an early Led Zeppelin song too. Another kind of comparison as to like how everybody back then was kind of, when rock was doing, this kind of a similar thing. But I think what really just brings these songs down in all seriousness is just like her vocals are just too much.
Mhm.
They're just too much.
Like kind of a Hughesy situation, like maybe like California Jammers just whoop whoop.
That was just ridiculous, like,
yeah.
but I mean, this is more like, I don't know. I feel like, all right, if we're going to use that as an example, like Glenn Hughes, I feel like he kind of planned that out. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know about let's not get hysterical here.
wait a minute, what are you talking about? Oh, California
With
Jam.
Hughesy planning that out.
Maybe I planned it for him, but no, I'm talking about
used at all. But...
his no, but if you're talking about like on his albums, I mean.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like he planned that stuff out. When he was doing that kind of stuff, like that wasn't even similar to this, because that was just him just going ballistic at the end of a set or something. But like if you're talking about like something like LA Cutoff or Space High or any of that stuff, I mean, he definitely mapped that stuff out, but was still like really into it. Whereas this, I feel she was just kind of riffing and just doing her own thing, and not even a producer, maybe just like the band getting together and just being like, maybe you don't go to the top shelf with your screaming like every verse.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets really fatiguing, because I mean if Gillan could hit the same notes, but I mean just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, if Gillan was hitting like a Child in Time note like 4 or 5 times in every song,
Right,
and it would make Child in Time lose the impact,
And to that point too, right? It's like, sure, you could say that Gillan would hit those notes in Child in Time, but I mean, it felt intentional.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course, yeah, it was.
And this feels like not. It just feels like unbridled. It's too much for me. So that's what's really kind of bringing the songs down. Then. So.
All right, I will also give this one a 3.5. I think the arrangement of it and just the emotional journey of it from the kind of soft vocal and guitar moving all the way up through the kind of climax there at the end is really good. I see what you're saying. I think it comes down to them being a live band and kind of inexperience, being that age. If I was 21 and I could hit those notes, I'd probably be throwing them in everywhere too, until, like you said, until maybe a producer and whenever we get to going back to Colorado, you probably hear that progression there, where if somebody's reeling you in a little, it might be a little bit, there's guitar players like that too. There's that will just overplay and you're just like, okay, we get it. Like,
right.
Play for the song a little bit more. And so I think there's a lot of that, and it comes with, like I said, just some of it's inexperience. So
right. I think
these are young, very young, barely adults who are making this album.
But I mean, you definitely hit on something which I've heard a lot of before, is like guitar players or musicians that aren't playing for the song, and I think that's how it is with this vocalist. And yeah, you make a good point. I
Yeah.
mean, it's valid, but I don't think, like, you know what, who knows that if they had an actual producer, or they had some guidance, would he have like, would the producer have said, hey, you need to tone it down, you need to sing for the song, not flex your vocal muscles for like the whole thing, just to show that you can hit these notes, but I get the sense, without knowing really anything about Candy Givens, is that she was just kind of this freewheeling spirit, type
sure.
of thing, and she was just singing whatever she was feeling. And I mean, the fact that you said that she was like, playing the whatever you call it, the washboard and stuff like that. I mean, like she was in a band, blowing in a jug or a washboard, whatever the hell she was doing, just indicates that that's probably the type of person that she was at the time, like really kind of, like you said, would have fit in a Woodstock, no rules, man, right?
Maybe she would have bumped into my dad. He was there. It's talking about the producer part of it. David Givens talks in this interview, in the article that I'm going to link to, is he does not speak favorably about the producer of this album at all. So I always thought, when like we talked about years ago, listening to this album and going back to Colorado, just like listening to, say, Shades of Deep Purple and then listening to In Rock or Machine Head or whatever, the progression is just as drastic, where you're just like, whoa, is this even the same band? Some of it's production, but I just looked up, I did not realize this, and I bet you're not going to know, but do you know who produced Going Back to Colorado?
I don't offhand.
Well, someone probably near and dear to your heart, but a very, very well-known producer by the name of Eddie Kramer.
You know what? I was thinking that. I don't know
Sorry,
why.
I should have made you guess again, but
no, because
I didn't realize he produced that. I mean, that of course explains the difference between the two albums, but wow.
Well then that could, that tells you why it was better right there.
Mm-hmm.
When you said that, I'm like, all right, it's got to be a Kiss connection, and I know it's not Bob Ezrin, so.
Yep. And then the only other change is they got Bobby Berge on drums, but other than that, it's Eddie Kramer is the producer. So,
well, he's no slouch.
No, not at all.
I mean, even then, he hadn't even like produced Kiss yet. He'd already produced Hendrix.
Yeah, I would assume this. Yeah, well, yeah, and they did it Electric Ladyland, so that makes sense. So,
yeah, so I mean, he was already, prolific producer. So I mean,
yeah, they must have gotten a little bit more of a bump from Warner Brothers when they when they went into the studio for that. They're like, they must have liked the band to kind of set them up in that studio with that producer and everything. So that's pretty cool. But anyway, talking about this song, so I guess we're done on St. James Infirmary. The next song is called Hanabana, which is a pretty cool name for a song, and allegedly gets that name because that's what Candy used to call David. But interesting, it's written by Candy and Tommy. So here we go, Hanabana.
Hanabana is a good old man. Oh, treats me good, baby, and doesn't give a damn. Well, everybody knows he's my hot chocolate man. Oh, Hanabana, oh, my little Hanabana.
They wrote this at a nightclub during one of their early gigs. It's a 2-minute song, so it's pretty
Hanabana, don't tell me no lies.
nothing crazy in the arrangement.
Oh, baby, little kind that hypnotized. Oh, Hanabana, I love my little.
But you can tell, even with this remaster, you can tell like some of the vocals are getting lost, like when she's talking softly, like.
Yeah.
I guess Tommy used to make fun of her for calling him Hanabana, so thought it was funny. So that's why they wrote the song. Gets their little fill in there. Classic.
My Hanabana keeps his spot in mind. Oh, it feels so good, baby. It feels so fine. Even when I ripped on my old red wine. Oh, Hanabana. Well, you're my little bit Hanabana. My Hanabana's all mine, and I don't love another man. Oh, my Hanabana is a good, good man. Oh, everybody knows he's my hot charging man.
Oh, she called him a hard charging man, which kind of leads into the next song. I thought she
Right.
said hot chachi man. What does that mean? Hot chachi.
My hot chachi man.
Hot chachi.
Oh, everybody knows he's my hot chachi man. It's
Hot
like,
chachi man. My
the hell?
chachi. Joni loves chachi.
Uh,
A very quick, again, kind of return to a standard blues percussion, throwing in some fills, a very quick track, 2.5 minutes. So, what do you think about Hot Chachi Hanabana? They should call the song Hot Chachi Man.
He goes, oh, Johnny loves chachi. Ow. You know, like, that's not even close to what it was. I can't even hit those notes, and I wouldn't want to.
No, I wouldn't. I'd be afraid if you could.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you were
me
hitting
too.
those notes, I think I'd call 911.
It's like somebody stepped on something.
They'd be like, "This is 911 in Rhode Island. How can I help you? I'm calling from Chicago. My friend needs help.
He's a hot chachi man.
He's a hot chachi man. Would you please hold? Hey, Bob, I got this guy on the phone from Rhode Island. I am in Rhode Island. He's in Chicago. Do we do that? Do we take calls from Chicago? All right, hot chachi. What do you think of Hanabana?
I'll give it a 3. I mean, I didn't think it was bad. I think the one thing that it had for it is that it was short.
Yeah.
And kind of amusing.
Yeah, and there's
So-
like we talked about, I think in the 7th Star episode was, there's nothing wrong with a long song if it goes someplace. If they tried to stretch this with no changes into a 9-minute song, we'd have some problems. But yeah, 2.5 minutes in and out, easy.
Yep. Done.
I
How
will
about you?
also give it a 3. Solid. It's like early days of a band, really young guys having fun. Let's make a song called Hanabana, ha ha ha, and I'll throw in a bass fill and you'll do a drum thing. And I get it. I remember being that age and doing the same exact thing and having a fun time. That's what it's all about. And there's no problem with it. It's not breaking new ground. It's not a rock masterpiece or anything, but it's a fun little blues jam. What do you want?
Right.
It's a fun blues band. That's what they're going for. I give it a 3.
What do I want? I want her to tone it down.
Well,
Is what-
she's a hard charging woman, John. So I don't
Anything
know.
like a hard loving man?
Hard charging woman, and this is a very long song to end the album out. It is of post toasty length.
Oh no.
We will see. We will see though, is it of post toasty quality? And the song is called Hard Charging Woman. When you press play and nothing happens, you're in a good, nice little fade in there. Almost sounds like a John Lord.
As
Lord.
any man can plainly see, I'm just as I appear to be.
This song is credited to everyone in the band, which could mean some extended jamming,
Yeah.
which I would assume from a 9-minute song.
That it was a jam.
Yeah.
Bad time is gonna come and you're gonna call out my name.
was almost a Zappa-esque, that little guitar run you just did. So we've heard about a hard-loving woman, we've heard about a hard-loving man. Hard-charging woman is kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, I hope David hid his credit card.
Makes me think of that the Flintstones. Charge
I was thinking the same thing. Charge it. Never understood that when I was a kid. It's just like,
I don't think I did either.
I mean, you're just like, oh yeah, women love to steal their husband's credit cards and charge
Oh, you know, women, they love to buy things with credit cards. Those crazy women.
Well, that's crazy. So do I. So does everybody.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Charge it.
They said that this
That would be funny if this was based on the Flintstones episode.
it must predate the Flintstones episode, right? When were the Flintstones on?
No, Flintstones I think were like 1965.
Really?
Like the first incarnation I want to say was probably like the early 60s.
My God, you're right. 1960.
Yep.
Wow. That would be great if this was. Well, funny you should mention that because in reading up on this, they said this was based on a Zap Comics character named White Man, who was a parody of a white middle-class businessman. One of his sayings was, "I'm a real hard charger."
Okay.
So, there you go. Not.
So we weren't too far off.
No, not too far off.
Still think it would have been better if they're just like, yeah, we're watching the Flintstones one day while eating Rice Krispies and Post Toasties and
Toast. Real live feel here with the guitar solo inserted.
yeah.
He's getting crazy. There's the Echoplex there.
Yeah, wow.
Here they are ending the song, but there's 5 minutes left. Nice. This sounds like a Sabbath groove here, right? Too. Sabbath blues, we have to call it.
Okay.
Man. That's a great
And my
groove.
feelings were a little bit too strong.
Little Ainsley Dunbar retaliation.
Whoa.
Whoa.
All right, that was different. I really digging this part.
This is great.
Yeah, the groove in this whole section is awesome.
It's at least the second time we've heard Ferris and Bolin both like soloing at the same time. Works pretty well. Yeah, going back to that beginning. This really reminds me of something else I can't put my finger on. That part.
As any man can plainly see.
Yeah,
Oh, you know
me
what?
too.
It reminds me of a White Stripes song or a Jack White. One of the two. Can't think of the name of the song though.
Feel no pain. But someday a bad time is gonna come. They gonna call out my name. But I've been trying to tell you, baby, oh, I don't play no games. I'm a enchanted woman. Oh, watch out for me, baby. Well, sometimes, you know, it seems to me, oh, man's love with these new release. Oh, I could have lived, and then it comes to me, and it would set each other free. Oh, it's time to let go of my hand.
When you look at this album as a live set, pretty exciting way to close it out.
Yeah. Now that's a way to end the album.
That's a pretty, yeah, it's a pretty all out onslaught for the ending.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, pretty impressed with that arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely took you on a journey.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think of Hard Charging Woman?
Charge it.
Charge it.
You put it in the document as Hard Cargan Woman.
I know, I just changed it. Hard Cargan. I don't know what that means.
You know what? I give it a 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
It had some good parts in it. It was a little long, but I mean, I guess I didn't mind it because we were chatting through some of it.
Yeah.
But
the Flintstones.
but it was pretty heavy. I mean, you know, that was
Yeah.
just really heavy. I don't know. I think that the live sound that they got overall was like just really good, you know, on this. Like this definitely you could hear them like ending their set with this. But
Yeah.
Definitely a good album closer too. It closed strong. So
Yeah. I think I will also give it a 3.5. I liked what they were doing with it, and I just liked the you know, the that bum, 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 bah, bah. It was something different to break it up from that 1-4-5 stuff that's going on through so much of the album.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, good. I mean, to me, even though we ranked it kind of similar, I think like Sail On, Cross the River, and this one are probably the, the very beginning, the middle, and the end are the three kind of standouts, and
Mhm.
everything else
Yeah.
in between is a mix of good and maybe not so good and filler.
Mhm.
But like we said, going back to any album by any debut album in the late 60s by a rock band is dealing with a lot of the same stuff. Filler, limited studio time. They're probably in the studio for a matter of days, trying to make their live set translate to the studio. An inexperienced producer, you name it, just rack up all the reasons why. But for an album from 1969 from such young folks, in a newish band, overall a very, very interesting album.
Mhm.
So that's kind of I think I messed up here, so I'm gonna have to get the album rankings.
Oh, I see it. I see what's going on in real time here.
You see what I'm doing here? I'm dragging formulas around, making it all happen. There we go. Now we got our rankings for the album. So
Okay.
if you want to take us on the
journey.
of Zephyr. Float on a
Oh.
Zephyr here.
All right. So we're in a yeah, it's one of our lower rated albums. 6.61 combined.
Mm-hmm.
Very little bit of a variance. I liked it slightly better than you. But that's funny. It ranks between our last album, which was Seventh Star,
Yep.
Black Sabbath, which was it was slightly higher,
Slightly higher. Yep.
and Fancy
And Fancy again.
by Wild Thing, yeah, which these were. I feel like that's about right, like where albums
Yeah.
like this usually fall. Like I feel like we say time and again that the rankings are not completely scientific and they're only within the albums that we ranked. But I mean, I feel like it makes sense, and is like I feel the same about this album, or would like this album, or listen to it as much as I would the albums that it keeps its company with.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be like, this is an album where I'd listen to a couple of songs off it. Same as Seventh Star, I would listen
Yep.
to a couple of songs off it. Or even, well, Fancy I didn't really know anything about, but I'd listen to like a song, like these are the albums I would listen to all the way through. Whereas like the ones that we have at the top and near the top are the ones where it's like, yup, I would barely skip any tracks. I'd listen to this as a full album type of thing.
And you look at it's when we talk, we were, whether intentional or not, drawing a lot of early Deep Purple comparisons, and this ranks higher than the first two Deep Purple albums, which honestly I think is fair. Thinking about those first two albums, they don't do a heck of a lot for me. I would rather listen to this album than the Book of Taliesin.
Yeah, but I have to say I'd rather listen to Rod than I'd listen to Candy Gibbons.
You talk about your audio just stopped. I don't hear you.
Hello?
Nope.
Can you hear me?
What happened? John is silent.
Can you hear me?
All right, let me pause this while we figure it out. All right. So we are back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. All right. So that's the first Zephyr album. That's where it ranks up amongst the rest of the stuff. And yeah, an interesting listen. I think you're hearing a band that's not quite yet firing on all cylinders, but we'll be getting there soon.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy was with them through at least I know going back to Colorado came out I think in 71. So I'm not sure how soon after that he left the band, but was with him for a little bit. So there you go. Looking at the notes, what do we see? Yeah, David Given said that they listed Barry Fay in the album as a friend, and that Barry Fay like lost his mind about it. He was all mad because he thought he was like the manager of the band, and typical nonsense.
He's just a friend.
Just a friend. They say he's just a friend.
Oh baby, we've been referencing rappers too much tonight.
Yeah, right. I don't know if we did any others on the show, but
no, I think we were talking about them beforehand.
Before the show, we're talking about Sir Mix-a-Lot. We're gonna start a Sir Mix-a-Lot podcast and have 6 episodes, 1 on each song. Well, he's one of those guys, though. I bet if you looked him up, he's been releasing albums like once a year for the past 30 years.
Yeah, for all we know.
You like look at his discography. I'm like, oh my god, he's more prolific than Zappa. I'm looking at him now. Discography. Okay, so he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 albums.
All right.
He released Mac Daddy in 1992. Was that what that would have been the one with I like big butts, right? Yeah, baby.
I don't know.
Mac Daddy was the name of the episode. That's great. Mac Daddy, 1992. Yeah, that would have been the Return of the Bumposaurus. That's 1996. He also had an album called Chief Bootnaka.
What was all of his like albums like ass themed or like?
Well, yeah, mostly. His last album was Daddy's Home in 2003. In 2019, he became the spokesperson for Cards Against Humanity's new Ass Pack. He latched on to, he's like, I am very ass focused and this is going to kind of be my thing.
Like my career is very ass centric. So
I'm not eccentric, I'm ass centric.
It's going to be very ass themed like type of things that I'm going to go with here.
Yeah, so he was on the scene for a little bit before his most famous hit, Baby Got Back. But we'll get into that when we do when we branch off into our Sir Mix-a-Lot podcast. Okay, so 6 episodes, 1 per album, I guess.
Yeah, these Sir Mix-a-Lot bonus episodes.
I mean, you talk about filler tracks on a album like this. Imagine the filler tracks on the album that contains Baby Got Back. So you've got songs such as Swap Meet Louie, Seattle Ain't Bullshittin', Sprung on the Cat, The Boss is Back. Yeah, he's got a few. Swap Meet Louie sounds like a good one. And of course, Mac Daddy, the titular Mac Daddy.
So the Deep Purple podcast, the only podcast that can draw comparisons in the same episode to Zephyr and Sir Mix-a-Lot.
And the Flintstones, we've got it all covered.
Actually, there were no comparisons. We just started talking about
that's true.
Same.
Well,
There are no comparisons at all.
I think Betty and Wilma are hard-charging women. They're independent. Right. They do what they want, just much like Candy, I'm sure was. Candy was a strong, powerful woman who asserted herself and did what she wanted to do, just like Betty and Wilma.
And Fred and Barney were hard-loving men. We can only assume.
It was hard to love them. What a bunch of boobs. You gotta admit, Fred and Barney didn't bring a lot to the table.
No, but I think that there's like a lot of like, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, a lot of missed opportunity for like, dirty jokes containing like, rock and, stuff like that.
Bedrock.
It's just like, hey, Wilma, I'm as hard as a rock. Well, that one writes itself.
I don't know if that qualifies as a joke.
No, it's like everything was like, Mr. Slate and, all that kind of stuff. Like
Mr. Slate. Hey, Bond.
Mr. Slate. Hey, Bond. Yeah, I'm not a ripoff of Jackie Gleason at all.
Right, Bond?
Hey, Fred. Hey,
All
I'm pretty good at that. But it's like, and then you got the bird over there. It's a living.
We're
just
totally,
have some.
We're totally off the rails.
Well, I think we know what the thumbnail is going to be like for this episode.
The possibilities are just swirling in my head as we speak. But before we get too carried away, I think we should probably call this one a wrap.
Yeah. Well, are there any reviews that you were able to find for the album or any of that kind of stuff, or no?
I asked Chris, he couldn't find anything contemporary, like from this 1969 set, 1970 or whatever. He just found like of a more recent one. I can read it because one Zephyr 1969 self-titled. This is by Jim Sheridan. It says Zephyr, the self-titled debut from the legendary Boulder Band, was Tommy Bolin's major label recording debut. The band's youth and the limited nature of the recording capability is somewhat apparent as his lead vocal Candy Given's flamboyant Janis Joplin fixation. Though barely 19 at the time of recording, Tommy's precocious musical capability is very apparent on this album, and his playing and his writing. He gets co-songwriting credits on 5 of the 8 cuts, including the album's epic 7-minute and 43-second opener, Sail On, and the equally grandiose closer, the 9-minute, 18-second Hard Chargin' Woman. Sail On travels all over the place, veering into heavy progressive rock jazzy sections that recall the Allman Brothers, there you go, Vanilla Fudge, and interestingly enough, Deep Purple in the wailing vocals and the grandiose B3 Hammond organ stylings. Fans of San Francisco acid rock sounds will find this release very appealing. The blues are given an electrification of serious proportions. Boom Ba Boom / Somebody Listen begins with a very tasteful instrumental and leads into a Led Zepp / Since I've Been Loving You-ish blues. Oh, I didn't actually read this before we commented, but sounds like we weren't too far off base. When compared to anyone, Tommy is usually compared to Jimi Hendrix, but this work finds his playing and arranging perhaps closer to Jimmy Page and the British School of Blues playing. However, one listen to the outro solo of Raindrops makes it clear that already his own distinctive playing voice had emerged, which is kind of what you said early on in the first song. It's Tommy's style already, even though it's his first real recording. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of funny that we picked up. I think it's cool when we pick up on things like that, and we're like, we didn't even read this before, and it's like kind of comparisons.
So somebody else says the same thing. You're like, oh, we're not as dumb as we think. Not bad.
Yeah, you're right, Bond.
Sure, Bond. But I guess I'm looking forward to eventually getting to their second album, because I think it'd be really interesting to see that progression when we finally get there, and who knows when.
Yeah,
in another 2 years or so. But anyway,
who knows?
With that is Zephyr, the album, self-titled album, or sometimes called the Bathtub Album. Let us know what you think on social media. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Tell us all the things we got wrong and how stupid we are. We love to hear it. And while you're there, click and subscribe. They usually do that in the first minute of the video. Subscribe, click the like button. But we're not YouTubers, so we don't need to do that because nobody listens to our YouTube. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you, my friend, and I will see you next week. What? Oh my goodness, the patrons. My goodness. John, I saw John's stick his finger up, and I knew exactly what he meant. The 1 stands for the $1 made up name tier. The rock solid foundation of our podcast. Coming in at the $1 made up name tier: L's Murders, Spacey Noodles, Leaky Mausoleum, I ran out of words, Michael Vader, Steven Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, and JJ Stenard. Hopefully I'll be coming at you with something from Leaky Mausoleum. The oozing Leaky Mausoleum. There we go.
Oh, that was weak.
What's weak oozing?
I don't know. You've had better ones. Oozing, leaky. I mean, that was kind of lazy.
Well, it was lazy because I didn't write anything down this time. I usually. Well, I've gone through all the words.
Right,
in
I'll
my
give it to you.
chorus. I can't think of anything else.
I mean, I was like, hard boiled the other week. I think I was noodles.
All right,
So
I'm delegating leaky
I guess I
mausoleum
should
to
do-
you moving forward. you can
Oh,
you can
boy.
text me the whatever, the prelude before the show or whatever.
You'll be like, what is it? And I'll just be like, scary.
It's scary again. But thanks to all of you for donating to the show. We really appreciate it. Always fun diving into some of these albums I haven't listened to in a long time. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So thank you, my friend. Until next week, we'll see you later.
I'll see you at the Water Buffalo Lodge, Bon.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.